So I would like to do a little round. Your name is Darragh. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Darragh?
Yeah, so very quickly on... This is on?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm Darragh, and I lead the engineering team at Intercom. And I've been working at Intercom since we were like tiny little company, and over the last 4 years it's grown quite significantly. It's been a great fun challenge, and I hope to talk a little bit more about that later.
Cool. Carmen.
Hello, I'm Carmen. I'm a sales rep for Github and also a wannabe coder.
And now the person with the most difficult name in the room, Dirkjan.
Yes, I'm Dirkjan. I work at Github on the Github Enterprise team, so I lead the engineering team that builds that product.
Great. Thank you guys very much. So I want to talk a little bit about, well, actually I want to hear about you guys, what you guys think about successful engineers. So you guys often, especially try and recruit successful engineers for your team. What are the characteristics that you look for? Do you want to start?
Okay, I'll start. So one of the things that usually people easily get hung up on is like the actual technical skills, but what we really try to look for in people is both the way they can work with other people and the way that actually you can learn. So somebody who's may not know the exact technologies that we work with, may not know the intricate details of some of the programming language that we work for. Like that's not a big deal. Like that's something you can learn on the job if you're a person who can learn if you're a person who can learn well and adapt to those kind of things and work in an environment where you're able to work well with others, because no matter how good of a coder you are, let's put it that way, you're not going to be able to do everything on your own. Like there's going to be problems that are going to be way bigger than you can solve on your own. It's going to cost you way too much time to do it all on your own. So you'll have to be able to work with your teammates and work with others to be able to understand what it is what the problem is you're trying to solve and how to take that on.
Great. And Darragh, do you want to go ahead?
I'd say a lot of very similar things, like basically summarizing what Dirkjan said is that like ability or experience is like really a point in time thing, and it's your attitude or mindset and your trajectory that is important. So like how well you learn, how well you can work with others. A couple other things, like for at Intercom in particular, we talk a lot about like engineers being like product engineers, and to me that means that they care a lot more about, they don't just care about the technology and the languages or tools that they use, but they care about the impact that they're having and the outcomes they enable in the product. That's pretty important. Two other things, like a really valuable thing is just like having a bias towards simplicity. Like software, computers are hard enough without humans making them harder, and like people who naturally just make problems simpler or make their solutions simpler over time are like invaluable. So like bias for simplicity is super important. And then another one which kind of echoes what Dirkjan was saying is just having realizing that the greatest people, like I think, help other people be great. So it's like it's a team sport. It's and that can manifest in multiple ways. It can be people who are great at like teaching and helping others learn and helping them do better work. It can be people who, through simplicity, make it easier for others to do good work. So, I think a misconception around like that cliche thing of a 10x engineer is like someone who can like go in the corner and go the fastest, but really the way to do it is to help others be great.
That makes perfect sense. So Carmen, you actually interact with a lot more engineers than these two gentlemen do on a daily basis. What do you see are characteristics of a successful engineer in general, in the people that you meet?
Well, for me, success is more who I want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And the engineers I end up working with the most are ones that can communicate clearly, talk to you like you're human, because I'm not an engineer, so I might not 100% understand the whole of the time what you're talking about. So you need to be able to explain what you're working on in layman's terms, and then be very patient, both with engineers and non-engineers. So for example, if you're a senior engineer and you're working with a junior engineer, take your time. Like, don't be so forceful, or maybe, and interact with, we were speaking about it earlier, like interact with each other as if you're speaking to a human, because a lot of you who are engineers don't actually, well, at GitHub, we don't really speak to each other face to face. It's all through issues or through Slack. So assume no malice and talk to each other like humans.
That makes perfect sense. So communication is key. Definitely other people said it as well. For you two guys again, since you are engineers, what for you are kind of like the success indicators? When do you feel like you're a successful engineer?
I'll start again. Next time you can go first. So I think for me, like when something is successful, like one of the things that I think is really important is also know what you're not doing. So the people that I see that are really successful are really good at picking the things that really matter. So the things that have priority, the things that really make a big difference. So you can work on something that is technically very complicated, is a very interesting challenge, but doesn't maybe have really a lot of value in actually solving that problem. And the people I see that are actually really good and that are like an inspiration are the people who are able to see like, oh, wait, this is something we need to focus on. This is less important. This is something that we really need to get done because this will give us a great impact in whatever thing you're looking at. Like this makes the product way easier to use, it makes it way faster, or sidesteps this entire problem that we're working on. So people who can think like that and have a good grasp of those kind of things, like I see those people to often be very successful.
Cool.
I'm gonna do a similar answer again. I get to think while you talk. So for me, like the most successful people, or how I think about success is like, I guess we often talk about the impact you have or whatever. So like the work I do, what outcome does that enable? What impact does that have for the business? And again, like the greatest engineers or people in general they think holistically. They think about the business. They don't think about the execution part. And that's how we want all our engineers to act. We want them to think like, think product first, and like engineering's just a means to an end, basically. So great people tend to have that mindset, and they tend to like blur the boundaries in all the roles. So they might not be a designer, but they'll have an opinion about it, so they can have a useful conversation with a designer that'll arrive at a better solution, rather than just feeling that I'm here to execute on someone's idea. So it's all down to like kind of ownership and like caring about the problem. And people who are great do work that they're proud of and they stand over. They're not just there for the job.
So I keep hearing communication again as well. Carmen, because you interact with so many different parts of GitHub, you have some very interesting ways that you've seen other people within the company communicate. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, at GitHub we use 5 modes of communication. We've got Slack for our like fun today stuff. Like I'm picking you up at 1 p.m. to go to the Young Creator Summit. So in sales we do a lot of our communication by like a support ticketing system. And there I speak with a lot of the solution engineers, so that's with a lot of app mentions, and they're only involved, for example, when I need a question answered. And one of the things we always do is try and answer the customer's question before getting the solutions engineer involved. So like a thing I've learned is try and do as much research as possible, try and do the work by yourself, and only ask for help at the end. That didn't come out well. Like, only ask for help when you've done some work. Don't ask for help straight away, because you need to show some initiative. No emailing. And then issues. So at GitHub, we all use GitHub. So in sales, we have our sales repository, marketing repository, legal repository. Then we do a lot of automation. So, for example, with Slack, we do a lot of chat ops. And so we use a robot not only for engineers, so, well, I'll let you talk about the deployment stuff, but we use, for example, for sales, we use robots to help us make a quote for a customer or check address for our office. And if you get it wrong, you get the picture of address. Like if you spell address wrong, that kind of stuff.
Nice.
But well, I think one of the really key factors to be a successful engineer is to understand your limitations. That sometimes a machine can do it a lot better than you. Mm-hmm. That it's okay to spend a day writing a script for a bot to do your deployments or your testing, because we're humans and you will end up doing human error.
Right.
Whilst bots, if you spend one day making sure it works fine, it will save you hours and hours.
So that's a good takeaway, automation. One more thing. So I've heard when I was at the GitHub Summit that, for example, if, first off, I should say, you guys work a lot with people remotely at GitHub, right? So, for example, Dirkjan, where is your team based out of?
So this will take a while. No, we have.
Well, how many different locations is your team based out of?
So we have our team is 8 people. No one is in the same city in the world as anyone else. So we have people in Germany, Spain, the UK, the US, in various different states, from Chicago to Texas to San Francisco. So
that's very spread out. You have a lot more communication problems than people that work in the same place.
I wouldn't call them problems. It's
obstacles.
No, but so in a way, yes, it's harder in some ways, and I think it also makes it easier in some ways. So some people often have questions like, how do you do that? Well, in this first step is like you actually have to be a fully remote team. So people that ask the questions like, oh, we have a team of 5 people here, and there's somebody joining who's wants to work remotely. How do you do that? Well, the only answer is those 5 people who live in the same or work in the same office, they have to work as if they are remote.
Right.
Like everyone has to embrace the way of you write everything down, you communicate asynchronously, you use tools like chat. Like you don't think up the new idea for your product and then decide on building that by the water cooler, because that means people have no idea what's happening. So anytime we have discussions around stuff like, what are the new things we want to build into our product? We have a discussion, we open internally a pull request with those changes on a document and discuss it there around these are the ideas we want to do. What do people think? Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Are we missing anything? Do people have heard things that are super important that we're not adding to this and we're not going to prioritize? So all those things are really important to make insightful for everybody and allow everybody to participate when they are available, when they are online. I found that a lot of the times the challenges around being asynchronous are actually even harder than not being in the same office. So working with people who are in a completely opposite time zone forces you to be able to work in a way always have some things in progress. If you're waiting for a review of your code on somebody, you have to be able to work on something else while you're waiting for that, because that person might not be online, they might be away, etc. But the end result is that I really appreciate the result of it, which is that it's a lot easier for people to, for example, start in your team and onboard, because everything's written down. They can read backstories on why decisions happened, why things were chosen to be in a certain way, and they can read and they can jump in really easily. So we had somebody start on our team 2 weeks ago, and they said they were surprised by how easy it was for them to get on board and to start contributing and actually creating pull requests and adding features or fixing bugs.
Cool. And so, Darragh, how about you? Do you guys have a completely spread out remote team as well, or no?
So interestingly, we're kind of the opposite. And what Dirkjan describes is cool. It's pretty aligned philosophically to GitHub and what you enable in your product or whatever. I don't know. I think we were chatting before and we both agree like that the worst thing is like the middle ground where you're like, yeah, you know, you have a few remote people, but you're optimized for face-to-face or whatever. But at Intercom, we optimize for face-to-face. We've got all of our R&D team in one office. And the way we work relies a lot on that, like human interaction and like lots of use of whiteboards and like face-to-face communication. And like, it's interesting that as we get bigger, we naturally also have to get better at written communication, having stuff recorded and written down. But so far, we're optimized around working together in one place, which has challenges. Like you limit who you can hire. You have to attract people to relocate to a different city rather than to work from where they currently live.
Cool. And do you have any kind of like processes around this communication or tools that you use that facilitate this?
Yeah. So like, I guess philosophically try to minimize as much process and communication overhead. So like, all of our teams sit together, and our teams are designed to be as independent as possible. So like, it's a mix of engineers and designers and product people and researchers and analysts. We're all together, so there's no like physical like disconnect between people or time disconnect. So, but then we use very similar tools. Like we rely on GitHub. We use Slack and are like, you know, finding how to use that in the most non-disruptive way. Email to some extent. Google Docs, which it's kind of interesting. Like probably one of the challenges you have when you write everything down is that you accumulate a lot of things. And like personally, I really like the property of Google Docs that you kind of lose stuff if you close the tab, finding it again might be really hard. So I like the idea of trying to keep what you need to keep in your brain or keep in your organization of data as small as possible.
Cool. And so to you again, Darragh, I would like to, for the people here that haven't used Git that much, how does the process work around building a feature? Say I already know what I want to build. I'm writing the code. How would that work at Intercom?
GitHub is our source of truth of our software and what's running, and our like. I'm not sure how familiar people are, but what's in GitHub, what's on master in GitHub reflects what's in production for our system. So engineers doing work will identify like the small simple change that they can make. They'll make that sort of to the side in like a branch which they can work on and get feedback from peers. And we go through a process of code review and like to help each other learn and arrive at a simpler, better solution. And alongside that human code review, there's like a bunch of different tools that help also give us a signal of whether we should make that change, like continuously running tests and like a computer's opinion if the code is simpler or not. And then when the team are happy to make the change, it's merged to master, which automatically triggers a deployment to our production systems. So that cycle couldn't be like minutes or hours. Like it's ideally like multiple times a day or like multiple times a week rather than months. So it's all about, you might have a big problem you're trying to solve, but it's all about the small steps that get you there.
So it's about cutting it up into small pieces. And so say I already have something small, do I then instantly deploy it to master or just like push the code to master?
So like the process is basically, we always get feedback from peers because no matter how brilliant we might be as humans, we're humans and we make mistakes. And also there's like, I'm close to a problem so I understand it well and it might not be clear to me that it's not clear to other people. So. Right. Get other input from people, and then once we're happy and like that's our process and our tests all passed, then yes, we do push that to master, which triggers a deployment.
Nice. I would like to switch gears a little bit. I would like to talk a bit about open source. So who here thinks it's a valuable thing that we should contribute to or has an opinion about that? Who would like to go?
I think these guys have better formed opinions, but I guess for starters, like I don't know that many companies today that any perhaps that would survive without relying on open source software. It's like the foundations on which everything we do is built, like even the languages, the frameworks, the operating systems often are open source and are the result of thousands of people giving their own personal time, or perhaps like company-sponsored time to make these things awesome. So we rely heavily on it. We contribute in small, simple ways, like fixing things we come across. We've made some efforts to publicly share work we've done, but not to the extent that other companies, maybe bigger companies than us do.
Cool. And do one of you guys think that everybody should commit to or work on open source code in some way or another?
Okay. No. I think you should only get involved with open source if you're doing it because you're interested in the project. I would recommend you not to do open source if you're doing it just for your GitHub profile to make it go green. I think there are some... the thing is, everyone here will find an open source project that they're interested in. There are such cool projects out there. Did any of you go to the GitHub satellite?
So I went, yeah? A couple hands here.
How many of you stayed for Nicole's talk? Yeah, so that was amazing. The cancer research open source project. It's a group of it's an NGO, a group of NGOs working together to find a cure for cancer, and they are basically data analysts and scientists that have to deal with thousands and even millions of data that they themselves can't deal with because it's too much. So they started an open source project for software engineers to help them develop a script or a piece of software that would help them analyze these thousands points of data. I thought it was really inspiring because we're all touched by cancer. That's kind of what the whole point was.
It's true.
So I know this is like a really kind of inspirational open source, but there are some smaller, more local-based open source projects like your local cancel bin project or your local boot camp. I don't know, but you don't have, anyway. So do, but don't do it for the right reasons. Don't do it to look popular.
Okay, so don't do it for popularity. Dirkjan, if you find a small bug in a piece of code that you're using from somebody else, do you then just fix it on your own, never push it back to the original? Or do you think it's valuable to contribute back as well?
I think it's super valuable to contribute back. So I always try to do it at least. It doesn't always succeed. Sometimes maybe it's a change that is more controversial or not. But at least I always put it up, even in that case, I push it up publicly for others to see, like this is the change we made, even if it's not in an upstream project. But I always try to be very active about that and see like, hey, this is an improvement we made. This is something we want to contribute back. And I think also, like GitHub as a company, we employ people who work on like Git itself, and all kinds of projects in that ecospace. So we're super active about that as well. And I think that applies to, like that kind of responsibility applies to any company where it's like if you're, most companies these days use open source, like it's unavoidable. Like even Microsoft, they open source .NET, Apple open sourced Swift. Like those are, everyone does it these days basically. So there's no real, as if you're a company if you as a company use open source, I think there's also like a social obligation there to say we contribute back on the things that we use and the things that we improve and the things that we find problems with. It's I don't know. It feels like it's just more and more. It's a matter of business these days.
Yeah. So you think you can justify the boss's time to? I don't know. You fixed the bug already to push it back. Do you think that's justified?
I think it's 100% justified. If your boss disagrees, I don't know. Maybe you should not be your boss then. But yeah.
then you should find a different company to work for.
Yeah, I don't know. That's sometimes an easy thing to say. It's not always easy for somebody to do, but I don't know. It's a signal to be worried about in that sense.
Speaking of different companies to work for, do you people have something to say for people that are looking for an engineering job? Any tips, pro tips for finding a new job or starting the job application process somewhere?
Yeah. So here's what I do, or here's what I do. What you want to do is optimize for learning. Like, you know, that kind of is a given. Like, the most valuable thing isn't necessarily like the paycheck you'll take home or the thing on your CV or whatever. It's what you'll actually learn. So finding a place that you know you get to work on interesting problems with people who inspire you is definitely an important thing. And another thing, which is like crazy, that I need to say this or whatever, but so many people don't actually form opinions about where they'd actually like to work. They kind of like, and I've been this myself, and I've seen loads and loads of people do this. They almost accidentally stumble from job to job, so the advice would be is to, first of all, you'll never get a job in a company if you don't try. So, like, you know, you're already pruning yourself if you're not trying to get a job in Github or wherever it might be. And secondly, like, no, do that from a very well-informed position. So know why you want to be there, because not every company is for everybody. Like, even the problem they're solving. Like, if you don't care about source control, you probably don't want to work in GitHub. So, like, make sure that your reasons for wanting to join a company are pure. They're not just that it's another job, because there's lots of jobs out there.
Cool. How about you guys? Any tips for people that are looking for a new job?
I think sometimes engineers forget the importance of soft skills. We've been speaking a lot about communication today. I think it's literally one of the most important skills nowadays. If you want to be if you want to get a job, you need to prove not only that you understand other people's communication, but that you can explain your thought process. Due to my role, I get the chance to speak to many developers from different backgrounds. So from a startup of 4 people to a company of 1,000 developers. And unfortunately, what I see is that sometimes the startups, they are 4 developers, and they don't. If they're using GitHub, they don't go through the GitHub flow, which is branch, pull request, merge. No. If you're doing a pull request and you're committing, do the branch. Get used to doing the process correctly. Get used to writing a clear commit message which says, change to pricing model up by 1%. And then explain in the commit message below what you're actually changing in the pull request. Don't just say A to B test 1. You might be solving a problem now, but 4 years later, when you're changing the pricing and your original team has gone, and now you've got new developers who have no idea what the code looks like, and all you see these pull requests that say A to B1, A to B3, that developer 4 years later on is going to have to spend about 2 days going through the code, understanding what it is, before they can actually make a successful change.
And you'll also be known as that guy who writes the terrible commit messages. I had a colleague who would always write merge, even if it wasn't merge, and also changes, which I think is a song by Tupac, if I'm not mistaken, and is not a commit message, in my opinion. So wrapping up, Dirkjan, we don't have a lot of time. Any final quick tip for somebody that is looking for a job or wants to be a successful engineer?
So a lot of things already were said. So I think it's super important. I think to reiterate is be curious and be learning. So even apply to positions, even if it's not the programming language you know best or whatever. As long as you're interested in knowing more, about it, as long as you feel like, that kind of stuff is interesting, you want to work on. Find a place where you can learn that and they are accepting of that. I think that's super important because ideally, like as a person hiring somebody, I want to hire somebody for what they can be and not for what they already are.
Right.
So be really deliberate about that and think about, this is the way I want to go. This kind of job really makes me move into that direction. And it's like, just do it at that point. So I don't know. Not much else that's already been said.
That's it was good advice nonetheless. Thank you very much, everybody. We are going to get everybody back into this big room, and then we're going to continue with the program. I want to thank all three of you. Thanks. Thank you very much. Thanks.